Chris Mannix joining us, Sports Illustrated senior basketball writer. All right. How did they pull this off and nobody knew what was going on with the Trailblazers and the Bucks?
Well, the reality, Dan, is Milwaukee wasn't really engaged with Portland until the last week to 2 weeks. The Bucks, they won 58 games last year. They felt pretty comfortable after the season, kind of nibbling around the fringes. But as the offseason developed, we saw Giannis Antetokounmpo pretty pointedly note that if this team doesn't do more to improve or doesn't put itself in position to be a championship contender for years to come, he was going to look elsewhere. And I think that really activated the Milwaukee Bucks front office. They had a piece that was interesting in Drew Holiday, who Portland doesn't necessarily want, but can certainly flip for other assets over the next couple of weeks and months. And they had another team in Phoenix that wanted to get in on the mix to build out some of its depth. So this was not a case where Milwaukee was talking to Portland all off season long. They just got really interested in this mix over the last 2 weeks and were able to put it together.
Do you think Giannis, if they didn't make this move, was not going to sign that new contract with Milwaukee?
He most certainly wasn't going to sign the 3-year, $169 million extension he's eligible for right now. He's eligible to sign that deal up until October 23rd, and nobody believed he was going to sign that. He was going to see how this season played out and go into next offseason where he would have 1 year left on his deal and be eligible to sign, I believe, a 4-year, $250+ million contract. So he was not going to sign the deal right now. He may still not sign that extension right now, but he and his team certainly have something to think about over the next 3 weeks. I mean, Giannis, as you know at this point, is an unabashed fan of Damian Lillard. Drafted him first at the All-Star game during the draft. So there's no doubt that Giannis wants to play with Damian Lillard. And this is not a situation where Lillard is a rental. Lillard's around for at least the next 3 years, probably 4, because that's a player option at the back end of that deal worth more than $60 million. So this is a guy Giannis can tie himself to with a long-term contract. And I think there'll be serious consideration given by Giannis and his camp to sign that extension now.
Anybody heard from Dame Lillard? He had his sights set on Miami, and now you end up in Milwaukee?
I mean, just that his own tweet was excited to be a Buck, excited for the next chapter. Damian Lillard wanted to play and live and operate out of Miami. There's no question about that. He liked the idea, certainly, of living in Miami, living on South Beach. But most important to Damian Lillard at this stage of his career is winning. If the Portland Trailblazers had a team that could compete for a championship, Damian Lillard would stay there. He would have no problem living in Portland for the rest of his playing career. Miami was Miami, but it also had a team that was coming off a finals appearance. It had ruthless competitors in Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo, and it had arguably the best coach in the NBA. So Damian Lillard saw that situation, said, I want to play there as much as I want to live there. He certainly doesn't want to live in Milwaukee as badly as he wanted to live in Miami. Yeah. But the Bucks give Lillard probably a better chance to win multiple championships over the next 4 years than Miami did. Jimmy Butler, as great as he is 34 years old. The Heat don't have a lot of talent right now down there around him. The Bucks, Giannis is 28, Chris Middleton in his early 30s. They've still got the ageless Brook Lopez on that roster. I mean, that team is built to win championships. And I promise you, that is the most important thing to Damian Lillard.
I felt like Miami was almost at a disadvantage because Dame wanted to go to Miami, and therefore Miami probably was not giving a great offer or one that would get Portland's attention. How did Miami, for lack of a better description, screw this up?
Well, they didn't go all in for Lillard. And the reasons for that, could be multitude. Maybe they didn't believe that, Lillard at 33 years old with $200 million left on his deal warranted them to go all in. Maybe they wanted to keep some of their powder dry in case a player like Giannis or a player like Joel Embiid became available over the next year, 2 years. Miami is always in star hunting mode. And I think, look, the Heat believe that they were the only game in town. And the reality is, for a while, they were right. As I mentioned, the Bucks were not in this mix for the better part of this offseason. The Raptors, another team mentioned, they were not in this mix for the better part of this offseason. For a while, the Heat were operating from a position of strength. Where the Heat got it wrong, and where I think majority of Heat Twitter and some members of Heat media got it wrong, is that they just couldn't conceive the idea that Joe Cronin wouldn't do a deal that would satisfy Damian Lillard. There was a belief almost that Cronin and the Blazers should feel lucky to get some combination of Tyler Hero and a couple of first-round picks. The Blazers never operated that way. They didn't want Tyler Hero. They believed they could do better than Tyler Hero and a couple of first-round picks or 3 first-round picks, whatever it may be. And whatever you want to feel about DeAndre Ayton, the guy's a 25-year-old, 18-point, 10 rebound per game scorer as a third option on a team last year. This guy's got room to grow. So I think where the Heat got it wrong was that they believed they were going to be the only game in town leading into training camp, and that just did not turn out to be the case.
Chris Mannix, Sports Illustrated, senior basketball writer. I like what Phoenix did. You know, they got rid of DeAndre Ayton from the standpoint of maybe he was not going to be happy. Now, you know, he's even further down on the totem pole with Bradley Beal there. And they added some depth there. Are they the team to beat out west now?
Well, we have to see how it all comes together, right? I mean, we get really excited about these super teams, and sometimes they work out, and sometimes they're like the 2012 Los Angeles Lakers. Sometimes it just, you never know how it's all going to come together. But even though on paper, I don't like the Ayton deal because Ayton's a really talented guy, and I would have loved to have seen what Frank Vogel could do with him. Frank Vogel's got a rich history of reviving centers. He did it with Roy Hibbert in Indiana. He got the most out of Dwight Howard during his season in Los Angeles. So Frank Vogel, I think, would have maximized the talent of DeAndre Ayton. But I get the deal, right? Like, they needed NBA players, credible NBA players, to be part of that rotation. Grayson Allen, he's certainly one of them. He gives them a 40% three-point shooter to play off all those guys. Nasir Little, I think, is a good player. Yusuf Nurkic, certainly not the player DeAndre Ayton is, but a serviceable guy to play in the middle, and someone that's really used to setting, crunching screens for players, as he'll be asked to do in Phoenix. So I get it from Phoenix's perspective. I do think they got deeper. Whether they got better, we'll see. But they prioritize depth in this deal over maximizing the top-end talent. Who
do you put as the team to beat this year, right now?
It's Milwaukee. It's got to be. I mean, look, the reason the Bucks have bowed out of the playoffs over the last couple of years, whenever they've gotten in trouble in the playoffs, it's almost always been half-court offense. I mean, for all of Jrue Holiday's marvelous talents, he is not an especially efficient half-court offensive player. Damian Lillard solves that problem. He is a cure-all for that problem. He's going to step into that lineup and have one of the most devastating two-man games with Giannis Antetokounmpo that we're going to see in the NBA next season. Now, people can say, yeah, they lose something defensively, and they sure do. I mean, they're not going to be a top-5 defensive team again, but they still have Giannis and Lopez on that back line to clean up a lot of their mistakes. So I think they'll be okay or good enough defensively, and they're going to be positively dynamic offensively. They've still got some depth there with Jay Crowder. Pat Connaughton is in that mix. Marjan Beauchamp is still there, and they'll be in the mix to sign guys after the trade deadline this year. I just think they're not only the favorite right now to win the East, they're the favorite to win the whole thing.
Good to talk to you, Chris, as always. Glad you're fired up here talking basketball during football season.
You got it, Dan.
Thank you, Chris. Chris Mannix, senior writer for Sports Illustrated.